Oh. I'm waiting for Lube. Okay, hello, fellow heroes. What's going on? This morning, today, I wanted to kind of go over the games that have come out the beginning of this year. We had a good lineup this year. Now, I myself have not been able to kind of like play these games to their fullest extent. I'm really wanting to talk about Final Fantasy, Stellar Blade, and Dragon's Dogma 2. Those are the games I want to talk about today. That it's been tough. It's been tough working a full-time job, trying to stream, and then trying to put out YouTube videos and a review and stuff like that. So this is my way, kind of knocking out the things that I'm behind on. And you know, I just kind of let you guys know what's going on. And I love talking about these games. I love, and I hope to see more stuff like this. But the beginning of the year has been good. So if you've been waiting on some of these games, I think they might be for you. First off, I do want to talk about Final Fantasy VII. I think Final Fantasy VII is phenomenal. The game. Critics have been raving about the game. They've been talking about like just how crazy it is and how like there's so much that's going on in the game. And I think like the main complaint about Final Fantasy VII is that there's too much game. And that's so weird to say from something like this, because when you play not Rebirth, but the one before it, like the remake, Final Fantasy VII remake, it is good. It's kind of everything you want it to be. Then the third act gets really crazy. I've listened to other people's review. I listened to Maximilian's review and other things, and they said the same thing about this one, where like the third act gets really crazy, but it does what it can to stay as like a 1-to-1 to everything that's going on here. God, that looks absolutely ugly. Can we get some 1080 in here, please? And when I say that the main problem of this game is that there's too much game, is that you are always, and I mean always, getting a tutorial screen when you are playing this game. Every time you go somewhere new, I want to say almost every 30 minutes a tutorial pops up, because they're introducing new things in the game. And right when you think you're getting tired of everything that's going on in the game, it like changes things up for you. So you're never really ever doing the same thing over and over again, which is a good thing. I think what's important about the game is that it knows its audience of gamers, right? Because I think like the Final Fantasy formula itself can get old really fast. Kind of like in Remake, I got into the pattern of, okay, here's a bunch of role-playing elements. Here's a bunch of elements where we talk to people and we do these like weird little mini games, and then we go out into the kind of semi-open world, semi-linear path open world that's rolled down for you. Kill a bunch of monsters, do all the quests that you picked up in the RPG segment, and then you go back and you continue the story. That's how Remake worked. It was good. It paced itself really well. Like right when I was getting tired of doing one thing, you would go and do another thing. There were some things in Remake, like what was really good, all the things that were good about Remake, they brought over to Rebirth. So whenever you're playing Rebirth, you are experiencing everything you liked about Remake, but then they take it a step further. So much so that it's like, I thought Remake was as good as it was going to get. I really thought that Remake was going to be kind of like the upper echelon of how they were going to reboot the series. Rebirth takes it to another level. Rebirth takes it so far and beyond what you think the game can and will be that you're kind of like, what the how are they gonna how are they going to top this in the third installation of the game? That's how far Rebirth takes it, in a good way. And there's so many things that happen. There's so many like callbacks to Remake that you just have fun with, and you can't help but having fun with. And that's the entirely best part about it, is that there are these moments in Rebirth that are so memorable, like in Remake with the Cloud having to get, literally getting a hand job in the game. That happened, that kind of gets a callback in Rebirth. So it's like, if you've never played Final Fantasy before, there's a lot of things that get called back. Do you need to play Remake in order to play Rebirth? I don't think so. I think the games do a good job at standing on their own, but it helps in the grand scheme of things. Like, the stories do continue, those relationships do continue. And speaking of the relationships, I do like that each of these characters keep their personalities, and those personalities begin to grow. They do a good job with the dialogue and using the most out of the exposition that you can, because exposition is used for the interpersonal connection between the characters. So a lot of people are giving this game 10 out of 10s, right? There's a lot of 10 out of 10s going around about this game. Is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth worth a 10 out of 10? If I were to critically talk about the game, yes, it is worth a 10 out of 10. Why? Well, mainly because the game itself does a lot to make sure that a general gamer doesn't get bored. The new systems in the combat are very well done to keep you engaged and to keep you going and doing new things constantly. And they did a better job at making sure that you're using all your units and not just sticking to like one type of unit and switching whenever you need to. You play better by switching between the units. The story uses exposition in a way that allows the characters to have these interpersonal connections, and the gameplay is constantly evolving and or changing in a way that makes it to where the player never really gets tired or bored of a system that's put in front of them. Which is why, yeah, I would give Final Fantasy VII a 10 out of 10. There are some cases where I did feel like I was given too much game, where I felt like, I was like, man, this just keeps going. They just don't stop giving me this. And so like, it's hard for me to imagine or fathom what it would be like if we got a third installation, and I hope they don't like double that too much. I hope they don't triple down on that. In the case of that, I gotta go because I'm at work, but I hope you have a great rest of your stream. Thank you, Hysterical. I'm glad you got to stop by and enjoy a little bit of the stream. Hope to see you next time. And but Final Fantasy VII Rebirth overall does everything it needs to do. Hits great storytelling with great character progressions, great antagonists, does a great job at giving you gameplay that evolves and changes, and it knows when the players are getting tired of it. And then the fighting and the core mechanics of the game itself are fundamentally just like fun to use. At first, I think I was playing the game incorrectly, but then, after watching some other people play, and this is going to be a theme of me playing games incorrectly. I feel like I've been broadening my horizon, but you then kind of, you basically, what I found was the most efficient way of playing was like attacking with a character. Like, let's say you start off with Cloud, making someone the leader, attacking with that character. Once they get their gauge up, at least the first gauge for me, I would activate the gauge and immediately switch. This does two things. The character is able to land their gauge attack more successfully, but it also takes aggro off, because like the enemies, the NPCs are designed to attack whoever the player character is controlling. Now, if you play it on dynamic difficulty, that's what I was playing on, was essentially the hard mode, where like the NPCs adapt, I guess, to your playstyle or adapt to like what needs to be taken out. A lot of times the NPCs would attack Aerith. Like, they would attack my weakest character at first just to get rid of them, and then they would switch over and attack other characters that were harder to kill. which became fun. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. It was dynamic, and it made me switch from just like, oh, my gauge is full, activate ability, switch to next character, gauge is full, activate ability, switch to next character. It made me have to kind of like force the game to work in a certain way. I'm a bit more stubborn. I know other people that were like min-maxing preferred to play the game in a way that was, I guess, min-maxable. Like they would look at a certain fight, or they would look at a certain area and be like, oh, there's a lot of aerial creatures here. This is what I'm going to use. This is how I'm going to use it. And I would do that to a certain extent with like my spells and my abilities, but I would never really change my lineup. I just wanted Aerith and Tifa with me at all times, and I enjoyed having them with me at all times. There were moments that I thought was really cool where, you know, you have Barrett in the background with Red just kind of fighting. And I think even though their engagement involvement was kind of small and minuscule, it was still nice to see them do that in the background. I felt like the whole party was constantly like there all the time. Though I also really loved this, like the dungeon segments where your party would get split up and you were forced to play as other characters, and like characters would have gimmicks like Barrett that would like suit their personality. So like Barrett is all about, you know, just kind of gun first, shoot first, ask question later. So his gimmick is about shooting the area. I know there was a whole controversy, not so much a controversy, but there was like everyone was pointing and laughing at the yellow paint, because yellow paint has been such a thing in games. I don't mind so much the yellow paint, but this game does do a lot of that kind of hand holding in traversal, because traversing through the game can be very annoying. The game has moments where there's a lot of just nooks and crannies in the floor, and I would much rather you would just automatically clamber over stuff or move over stuff, or just put a jump button in the game. If there really was a jump button in the game, it would make a lot of difference, because there was never a moment where you could, on your chocobos or anything, you could just like run. There was always something that interrupted you, or there was kind of jankiness to the movement because of the environment and how jagged it was. You get used to it, but essentially it does kind of get in the way of things. But yeah, that's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think out of all the games I've played this year, this one is overall a 10 out of 10, the best, just well developed and put together, and a ton of fun to have with it. Now let's move on to Dragon's Dogma 2. So Dragon's Dogma 2 is kind of refreshing in a way. Dragon's Dogma 2 is very old school when it comes to playing games. You don't necessarily have the yellow paint in this game. The yellow paint is non-existent in Dragon's Dogma 2, because I think the person, the developer, which is funny because the first game that came out, the first Dragon's Dogma came out when Skyrim came out. And I think Skyrim definitely overshadowed Dragon's Dogma 2. But this is a good game. This is just a good game. And like, the problem with this game is I think it's very niche. And it's so sad to say that this game is niche, because it's old school. It's old school in the fact of like classic WoW, where it doesn't hold your hand as much as Final Fantasy does. Final Fantasy gives you a quest, tells you exactly where to go for the quest. You can almost turn off your brain whenever you play Final Fantasy. And that's why like, Final Fantasy adds so many like gimmicks to the level design, is because you can turn off your brain. You don't necessarily turn off your brain when you play Dragon's Dogma. You always kind of have to be locked in and engage, and it gives you a very immersive experience because of that. So like when it comes to Dragon's Dogma 2, I'm going to come out of the gate and say it. The story sucks. The story isn't the main selling point of this game. I think in a weird way, the story is too immersive, There are moments in the story that seem epic and wild and cinematic, but they're not that great. They don't involve you enough into the world. And when I say like the story is too immersive, it's kind of to the point where like you are talking to these people and these people are saying that things are happening, but you're not really engaging or seeing too much of your influence affect the story. You're kind of, I think like it's real, like there's the quest where like there's this lady who is, you know, she's the leader of a town, but then she kind of gets kicked out of the town and she kind of runs away, and then you find her at another town that needs new leadership and she becomes the leader there. And then, you know, you're trying to figure out who the prince is, and you go into the brothel and you kind of spy on the prince through the brothel, and it's almost like the game gets you to these places to tell the story, but the story is just kind of being told to you in a narrative that doesn't really matter to the player all that much. Like your character, your interest in the world, I think is just kind of bland when it comes to storytelling. And that's okay, you know? And I know there's going to be people that probably are going to disagree with me and think that the story is phenomenal and that they did a real good job at telling a very political, engaging story. But I think for what the game offers, you don't really show up to this game to play the story. You show up to this game for the immersion and the phenomenal gameplay. For me personally, the immersion is a bit too much. It's a bit too much. I think I need some more yellow paint. And what I mean by that is like the limited fast travel service, which there's a controversy behind it, and we'll get to that in a second. But the limited fast travel service where you have to have an item, a magical item, to fast travel you from place to place, and even that is limited. And you can find the stones, and you can put stones down in places you wish to fast travel, and you can find multiple stones. I think this game does a phenomenal job at rewarding you for exploration, right? So like you go out, you explore, and you find things that are useful to you, that you can make use of, is what I should say. and I think that to me matters more than going out into a world and finding a super rare legendary item. As weird as that may say, I love that Dragon's Dogma, like the blacksmith makes good shit for you. I love that. I love that you go to a blacksmith and he makes the best items that you can make, and you have to like go out into the open world and gather material resources enough to buy stuff from the blacksmith. As much as I love the kind of Lord of the Rings feel that the game gives, where you come on. I'm sorry, the game doesn't give you a Lord of the Rings feel. I love the Lord of the Rings style that other games give, where you go into a dungeon, you find this ancient weapon that was once used by some hero of the old times, and then you can go about and like start wreaking havoc with that weapon. I think that's really cool, and I think that does something to the brain. Is that Diablo, you loot and you just keep going and you look forward to the loot. Dragon's Dogma doesn't really do that. I'm sure there's some cases where you do find cool stuff, but it's not as often as like other games do it. Most of the time you're gonna get the items you need from the shop, and it makes use of the shop, and it makes use of the money, and that's very important when it comes to Dragon's Dogma, is that it makes use of its world. Everything in its world has a use and matters. Like going to sleep matters, getting rest, eating food matters. There aren't many mechanics in this game that don't matter, right? Like every mechanic can be used, and it all comes together to create this like very beautiful immersive experience that you can tell your own story with through the gameplay. Like this is one of those games in Final Fantasy, I had my cool moments, but I had way more moments where I felt like a badass in Dragon's Dogma. Even just fighting against like small enemies, they created moments for me that I was just like, that is addictive, that makes you want to go back and do it. There's something about being just a warrior, you know, with a sword and shield in hand, and then you have to fight a golem that shoots lasers at you. That just fulfills a power fantasy that I always wanted to have. Like, I feel like an underdog. I feel like I'm Batman in that sense, right? I don't feel like I'm this overpowered super soldier that can do all these crazy things. On top of that, relying on your party to give you guys abilities makes the party useful. It's like, you know, you can have a balanced party that does all these things for you, or you can have an imbalanced party that cares more about doing damage and things like that. Like, even though I'm a warrior, I can call upon a mage to give me elemental abilities that otherwise I wouldn't have. The party becomes essential to the game. It's not about just being alone, it's about working together as a group. Then you overcome tasks that normally probably wouldn't be possible as a group. So the Dragon's Dogma just like really fulfills a fantasy of gameplay that we don't really get anymore in today's like games. I think today's games focus way too much on loot boxes and, you know, trying to get you to buy stuff at the shop and because they're doing that kind of stuff, the shop is integrated into the gameplay. And because the shop's integrated into the gameplay, a lot of the game is bounced around weapons and stuff that you can get out of the shop or the multiplayer features of the game. This is just a good single player experience that makes you kind of want more of that. Want more of Dragon's Dogma 2. And I think that's what makes Dragon's Dogma 2 so brilliant and so beautiful. And like, if we were to speak overall, like, why is Dragon's Dogma 2 good? Well, it lacks in story. Its story is something that isn't what I would, you know, go towards or recommend people for. But whenever I talk about Dragon's Dogma 2, whenever I go into it, it's always going to be about the gameplay. It's always going to be about giving an immersive experience that no other games give today. Sometimes that experience may feel too immersive and may make the game feel niche in the sense that, yeah, you kind of have to walk everywhere. It's not forced and there are ways around it, but it's an example of an old school type of game where you have to pay attention to the quests given to you and you really have to commit the time. But it's a very good sense of fulfillment from playing the game, and the gameplay is all essential. That's the third part and great part about this game, is the systems in this game are essential. You go out into the world, you explore, you find resources that then take you back and give you a reason to spend your gold and money at the shop, which then upgrades you, which then makes questing easier, which then makes questing more rewarding, which then kind of fulfills a whole circle of the game that you yourself feel like you get to experience in the world, having you be so ingrained into it and forcing you to travel through it is great. I would say that it needs more kind of elite encounters because you run into them a little too often, but sorry. I was trying to record something for a TikTok and I just realized I messed up. Which is why, like, you know, I would personally give Dragon's Dogma like a 9 out of 10 because it does something that no other games do, and it does a lot of things that other games try to do better. But what I was talking about with the elite monsters, I do think that the elite monsters, there needs to be either more of them or the world itself. I don't know. I found myself like walking through the world a lot in a way that was like repetitive. And I know there's like cars to fast travel through and back like that. And kind of once you've explored an area and you've kind of completed all the dungeons in that area, there's no need to go back through it again because you've looted all the chests and things like that. So it's good to just use the fast traveling options. And there are a lot of good fast traveling options and ways that the game naturally allows you to get to certain parts of it, especially once you've explored everything. The game understands what the players needs and rewards the players for actually playing the game. And that's the best part about it. But if you find yourself like how I did in the first couple moments of the game where you're walking back and forth and you're doing a lot of things, you're going back or you're trying to complete a quest, or maybe you picked up a quest at the wrong time because like this is probably your first playthrough. The second playthrough would probably come out more naturally. You know what quest to accept, when to accept. What it does is it creates a situation where you realize how formulaic the open world is. There are just certain monsters that spawn at certain areas, which is good if you're trying to farm out specific rewards for yourself and specific things. But it falls flat once you kind of like see what's behind the curtains. And you're like, oh, well, I'm going to run into a minotaur here. I'm going to run into a troll here. So I probably would have liked a little more variation amongst the open world. But when you're experiencing everything for the first time, it feels great. It feels great. It feels new. And there's enough variety to keep you going. So Dragon's Dogma 2, great game. Kind of niche. If you are looking for something old school, I would recommend it. Like, that will give you that good old school feeling. But if you're looking for something kind of more recent but gives you a lot of variety, I'd say go to Final Fantasy Rebirth. Now, if you're looking for something that's a bit of both, but this is more Souls-like, so that's where we have Stellar Blade. Stellar Blade had a lot of controversy going around it. It's stupid controversy. I don't really want to address it because I think the controversy around Stellar Blade isn't I don't even think it's like worth mentioning. Like, it's really just because people say you would only play the game due to the assets in the game. Essentially, basically, our main character looks hot, looks sexy, and like people are only playing the game because they're horny, right? Well, in some cases, I think it's a good gateway to get people into it, but once you start playing the game, it's kind of like when I was watching Fallout. Like, if I took away the Fallout skin, the game was still good, and that's how Stellar Blade was for me. If I took away the fact that I was playing as a sexy protagonist and I put something else in there, like if I was playing as that dude, for example, I'd be okay with it. I would still want to play the game. Now, when I first jumped into the game, I think like I'm really bad at Souls-like games. I haven't played a lot of them, and I wish I spent more time playing Souls-like game. I've only dabbled in them. So like I played a bit of Dark Souls, a good bit. I've put about 20 hours into Dark Souls, and then Elden Ring I probably put 20 hours. So like I've played them, but I feel like I've always been bad at them. I feel like I get through like the first handful of bosses, and then I never finish them. And Stellar Blade is a lot like Sekiro. From what I've heard and from what I've seen people say, Stellar Blade is a lot like Sekiro. And I think that is... I wonder what this is. This is gameplay overview. I don't know how much footage this will show. I was hoping to show my own footage, but these trailers... I've been kind of talking real fast about these games, and I've been getting through them. And Stellar Blade, when I say it's like Sekiro, it focuses a lot on getting counters out. So if you're a fan of Souls-likes, this is where to go. I think Stellar Blade is a good game to go. It does one of those things where you notice a lot of gameplay features that are taken from other games. Kind of like what Spider-Man PS4 did, where it's like, it's not giving you a lot of new gameplay features that you haven't seen before, but it does them well. And it does them well enough to where like you're familiar with it, you understand what you need to do, and so you kind of just continue, you go on with it. Some of it for me got annoying real quick. There's a lot of just like go get the goober in the beginning portions of the game. So there's like when you're first starting the game, it's a lot of like, oh, I can't open the door. They guide you to this door, then they're like, you have to go the other direction to go get the key for the door. You grab the key for the door, and then like you get to go through the door. And that portion of the game kind of turned me off, on top of the fact that I was like bad in the beginning. And the reason I was bad was because I was treating it like Dark Souls, never really playing Sekiro, which is funny because like a lot of times when I hear people who first played Sekiro, they said like once you learn how to play Sekiro, it just clicks for you. And that's what happened to me with Stellar Blade. Is once I learned how to play the game, it clicked for me. Because what bothered me in the beginning was when I was playing it like Dark Souls and I was standing my ground, I'm fighting these enemies, and then they like the dodge system isn't like Dark Souls. Like I'm so used to Dark Souls where I get to just like roll away and get away from the game. Even like Lies of P, it was the same thing for me. It was like I could roll away, or like once you learn how to like counter and block in Lies of P, you got the gist of it. So in Stellar Blade, the enemies, they don't just attack once. Enemies kind of have their own combos, and each enemy has like unique combos that are specific to them. And that's the part that bothered me, is I felt like I wasn't able to deal with the enemy combos, and I felt like the game was being unfair and just stupid. But then once I learned that the game wants you to counter more and dodge less or run away less, like the game is telling you like stand your ground, like kind of man up and like fight these things. That's when the gameplay started to click for me and started to be more fun. Not only that, but like as you upgrade and as you get materials and as you get better skills, it just becomes wildly fun. Like so much so that I find myself going back to Stellar Blade in my free time than I do the other two games. And even though I gave Final Fantasy like a 10 out of 10, that was like critically speaking, you know, with all the systems and gameplay and stuff like that. If we're looking at Stellar Blade critically, it's kind of the same position with Dragon's Dogma. The story isn't that great. It's more cinematic, and it has those moments where the characters are kind of talking to each other, but it just feels like it skips a step. It feels like the characters end up speaking to one another, and they already know each other, and they already become like friends, and it feels like they're talking about things. You don't really feel as attached to the characters as they feel attached to one another. And I think the reason for that is there was never really conflict between the characters. They met each other, they know they were supposed to like each other, and so they just started liking each other. There was never a moment where we as the audience got to feel what the characters were feeling about one another. We never got to feel them get mad at each other, or them start to like each other and see why they like one another. We're just like, oh, okay, well, I'm supposed to like the main protagonist because I play as the main protagonist and because they are good. There are a lot of similes and things like that in the story, a lot of references, kind of biblical references, and then other like media references. The game developer, or the people making this game, had fun making this game. They wanted to just make a good game, and they wanted to tell a story. I think the overarching story is intriguing enough for you to like feel rewarded whenever you get to those points. But overall, this is another one of the games where like the story isn't the reason you stay. You come back for it for the gameplay. Now, when it comes to like the systems, it's not as good as Dragon's Dogma systems. I didn't really touch on how Final Fantasy was really good at giving side missions and stuff like that. I kind of forgot to touch about that, so I'm gonna touch on that just a little bit right now. Final Fantasy did a real good job at side missions to the point where like you almost feel like you're gonna 100% the game because of like all the side missions you're doing. And they do, because some side missions are tedious and they get to the point where you're just like, I'm kind of done doing it. And that's where I was talking about, like, the game knows when you get tired of something. Same with Dragon's Dogma 2. The side missions are well enough to where, like, they change up the pace of the game and they make the game really, like, feel embedded into the world. Make you feel embedded into the world. Stellar Blade doesn't really do that. Stellar Blade side missions and story are the weakest part of the game. The side missions don't do much to change up what's happening. Just about 90%, maybe I'll even say, I'll be generous and say like 80% of the game side missions have to do with the fact that like you are just going somewhere to pick up something. A lot of time I got to the point where like I just cared more about skipping what was happening because they felt like MMO missions where it's just like go over here and do this. So much so where they even have like a kill count where like sometimes you'll when you are transitioning to another open world area of the game, a lot of the side missions, or some of the side missions I should say, are just you killing a certain amount of monsters, a specific certain amount of monsters, and then just going back and turning it in. I did as many side missions as I could in kind of like the first act, but once I started transitioning into the second act of the game, if I walked up on the side mission by coincidence, I would do it. But for the most, I wasn't going to go out of my way to do the side missions because it felt more like padding the game time than anything else. And then seeing what other reviewers were saying, how like other parts of the side mission just brought you back to maps you previously went to before. And then the map design isn't really integrated for that because like you don't get a map on some levels. And the the compass isn't really as good as like God of War's compass. I think God of War had a legendary compass that everyone should use God of War's compass. And the way God of War's compass worked is like if you're in a room, let's say like where you had to go was north, but the only way out of the room was east. God of War's compass would show you which door to take and which hallway to take to get to where you eventually needed to go. God of War's compass would essentially give you a yellow brick road without putting the yellow brick road on the map. So you could like look at the compass and then like continue walking through the game and you always knew where you were going and what you were doing. And Stellar Blade's compass isn't like that. It's just like, yeah, what you need is north. Good luck figuring out how to get there again. I think the map design is balanced enough. There are shortcuts and the pathways are very self-explanatory, but the game definitely, like, you feel the game's flaws most with the storytelling and the side missions. And kind of like the essentials of the I don't want to say mechanics of the game, but like the I don't know what it's called. I need to find a word for it. But kind of the fundamentals, the essentials of the game, the UI of the game that is supposed to be the quality of life, but kind of turns into the detriment of life. But when it comes to like monster designs, the designs themselves, I don't know. I'm not really particular about like designs. I think they're cool. They're grotesque and weird, but there's so many different types of enemies. Everywhere I went, I was running every like new level I went, I was running into new types of enemies, and they would repeat enemies from time to time, but they didn't repeat them enough for me to just kind of be like, oh my gosh, this is too often. Yo, what up, Brody? What up, Turtle? How you doing? Welcome to the stream, man. And that, I think that's really good. There is like an immense amount of different types of enemies to fight in this game. And that's really a good thing. So, you know, like overall, let's talk about this real quick. So like overall, when it comes to Stellar Blade, you have a weak story. It's kind of the character progression and stuff in the story doesn't necessarily engage or entice the players as much because they kind of skip the conflict between the players. The main story itself, it has enough plot twists and enough moments for you to feel engaged, so it does have an up in there. The side missions are not one to be desired. I think like anyone who's looking at 100% the game and stuff like that may feel like the side missions are feeling tedious in those moments. Don't know if you guys just heard that car, but the gameplay is where you come for. It's a lot like Sekiro. You're mainly focusing on countering. Enemies are going to have combos. You kind of learn the enemy's combos and you kind of have this great back and forth. The sword play and the counters really flow. The input system for the combat is a lot like Injustice. So it's not like Street Fighter where you have to time your inputs. You can kind of like, almost like you're putting in a program. You can hit square, square, triangle, and the game kind of remembers the order in which you've hit those buttons and they go for it. If you're not used to it, it can feel jarring, but honestly, it's my preferred way of playing. And I think the system design for the most part is good when it's applied to the gameplay. So whenever you're getting upgrades and skills and abilities that help you in fighting, you are constantly getting something new and exciting, and you are feeling more and more powerful, and they're giving you more things to your arsenal to where the gameplay is feeling dynamic, so you have ways of dealing with enemies differently. But when it comes to the world itself and your interactions with the world, it sucks. Like the side quests, integrating the side quest into going back into levels, the compass system isn't that great, and other things like that aren't that good. Enemies, once again, you realize you kind of got that Sekiro counterplay going for you. Enemies feel great to fight. I just have a ton of fun fighting in this game. I had more so with the combat system in this game than I did with Lies of P. I think this game has a more fair and fun combat system, and the gameplay is constantly evolving and changing, where at one moment all you have is your gun, where at other moments every time you finish a level you gain a new ability, which again adds to your arsenal, which is why like I would give Stellar Blade like an 8 out of 10. It does a lot of things good. You mainly show up for the gameplay. The assets in the game aren't something that you come for. You stay for the gameplay, but not so much for any of the other features. Yeah, and again, I find myself going for Stellar Blade more often. It's making me, I think I'm falling in love with like Souls-like games, and I might go through and just like play through all the Souls-like games on my own time. But do you think this game's going to see a price drop more sooner than later? It is a PlayStation exclusive, and it's a good PlayStation exclusive. If it receives a price drop, it's because the sales weren't that great. So I would look at the sales. If the sales were doing good, then get the price drop. You know, go for it for the price drop. Wait for it. I don't personally, if the sales, I don't think the price is going to go down. This is a good game. If you want a Souls-like game that focuses on gameplay, and you care more about gameplay than you do about other features of the game, definitely go for this game. You'll have fun with this game. If you're not a fan of Souls-likes, I would be more hesitant in getting this game. But there you go, guys. That's been Mario's Roundup. Over Stellar Blade and all that other stuff, the games. I also want to talk about, I have a bonus round. I have a bonus roundup. So for any of you guys that are staying to watch this video, thank you. If not, like and subscribe. We're almost at 500. Oh my gosh, what's happening here? We're almost at 500 subscribe. What is happening here? Jeez Louise. Man, my YouTube's horny. Sorry. We're almost at 500 viewers. Subscribers. We'd love to have you part of the Hero Squad. I want to talk about something that I wrote a script for, and I never ever like made a video about it, and that was Monster Hunter. So at the beginning Monster Hunter Worlds trailer. So at the beginning of the year, I played Monster Hunter. And I didn't know if I would like it that much. I've seen a lot of people play Monster Hunter. Shorty got a glowing butt plug. I saw that. I saw that. I didn't comment on it, but I saw that. So I was like, shit. I didn't know what to get out of Monster. I saw a resurgence. There was a ton of people playing Monster Hunter because Monster Hunter Wilds got announced. My friends have been playing Monster Hunter. They had told me to play it. I kind of just kept putting it off. The big reason I never played it in the past was like I played the demo or like the beta or something. I didn't really understand the multiplayer at the time. It's easy to figure out. Once you figure out the multiplayer, it's great. It's a shared universe. So like you can bring people with you to do missions and things of that nature, but the game can be solely played on its own. I know a lot of people, a lot of the big Monster Hunter fans are going to say that Monster Hunter World is nowhere near as good as the other games, or some of the other games. Like there are other games that are better. I think Monster Hunter World is the most attractive. It like graphically, like look at these graphics. Look at what's happening. Look at how these monsters are moving. So I think for like new players and stuff like that, it makes sense that they would want to come to this game. And I do think that this game is a well enough introduction into the series. I think like if people of the main, this isn't a video or this isn't kind of a review for people who have been playing the game for a long time, because I don't know a lot about the series. I don't know a lot about the game. I've really only played Monster Hunter World, but I am officially a fan of a lot of things that this game and series has to offer. And I've become a fan. Contrary to popular belief, I actually enjoy Wild Hearts more in the Monster Hunter world. I've never really experienced any of the other ones, and I've heard things about it. I don't know anything about Wild Hearts, but I guess but the thing about you, Turtle, is I know you love the kind of like the underdogs of video games, which that's what I love about you. You find the joy in even the ones that aren't so popular, which is really great. So Monster Hunter to me was kind of a turnoff because it seemed slow. It seemed really slow, but it does what Dragon's Dogma does. So if you're interested in Dragon's Dogma, but you don't like that it's too immersive, it's so immersive that it's niche, that it kind of takes away those quality of life, I recommend Monster Hunter, because you get to keep those quality of life while still staying immersed in the world. And what's great about Monster Hunter is you are just like a normal guy. You are just kind of like Batman. Sure, you have like super strength and you can wield this giant sword and slap T-Rexes in the face with the giant sword, and you're swinging around like Spider-Man at times to time. But at the end of the day, it's almost like you feel like you're accomplishing something larger than life, and that is a great immersive experience. You at first I was a bit disappointed that you kind of return to the same map over and over again, but there's this great and awesome feeling of like, these are my hunting grounds, and you start to understand like, oh, unlike in Dragon's Dogma where it felt weird to just run across the same creatures in the same places over and over again, it makes sense in Monster Hunter because that's like their territory. This is their turf. This is where they want to breed and hunt and nest. So like when you go back to the same map over and over again, you're really just experiencing you're experiencing your hunting grounds. You've become kind of like the monsters themselves, you know? And I grew to really love this game. I found myself just playing this game on my own time and not just for stream, for how fun it was. I unfortunately never got to the expansion, and I think like when a new player comes in, the game does a lot to get you to like to get you to Iceborne as fast as possible. So like they give you like gear that makes it real easy for you to play the game. And at one point I took off the gear so I could have more of like a true Monster Hunter experience. And I think a lot of people were turned off at the fact that like new players get gear because a lot of times you kill a monster, then you go back and you keep grinding to kill that monster. But with the game, the online experience, everyone's not there. Like I tried finding people to play with me, like random people to play with me online, and no one was really doing the beginner stuff. So I think it's kind of like a W on Monster Hunter to give you that option. And I know some people are like, you're kind of dumb for not taking that option, but there was a better sense of fulfillment whenever I would go back and grind a monster, and then I would put on that gear to like, I found a set of gear that I really liked that suited me and my play style, that I then just continued with that even whenever I was kind of like under leveled at some points, because I just really liked how the gear suit me. And I think that's what's another part about Monster Hunter, is there is definitely a meta on how to play the game. Like there is definitely a way of like, you can play the game and you can min max the game. And like whenever you are doing, you can group up with other players and fight these monsters that are crazy strong. But the best part about Monster Hunter is you can play the whole game solo, and you can figure it all out on yourself, and you can do it your way. And whether you want to boast on how you did it the harder way, or whether you want to boast on how you did it your way, that's the most fulfilling part about this series, is doing it that way. I don't think Monster Hunter gets a lot of credit, so I'm really happy that like we have it that's so accessible to people now, in a way of like, you know, you can get it on the PlayStation, you can get it on PC now, and it's not just like a game that's on the 3DS or on like just specifically geared to a niche system. It's geared to like systems that are more available to everyone else. Yo, hit me on Discord if you ever get some time and want to do some Monster Hunter multiplayer. Monster Hunter Rise is pretty dope too. A little more fast paced and traversal, because you get a mount. Oh, and you get a mount in WoW as well. I haven't played Rise at all. If I ever get back, I haven't been playing Monster Hunter because I've been so busy with these other ones. But if I ever do get back into that, and it was fun playing with other people, yeah, I'll call you in to have you carry me and have you do those other things with me as well. I would love that. Maybe we'll do it on like a community day or something like that. But yeah, like the cool thing about Monster Hunter is the freedom that it gives players, and that freedom creates immersion. And I think like what you want from a game is you want to feel like a badass. You want to feel like you're the one that's in control. And I think like Monster Hunter gives you that control and gives you those opportunities, and it has so many things in the game. Like when I was talking about like systems of the game, and I was talking about how like Stellar Blade kind of fails at allowing you to use its systems. There's never really a need for you to use like the grenades or anything in Stellar Blade. But in Monster Hunter, you know, once I figured out like to use traps and barrels and all these other things, they almost became like another asset in my tools and inventory and things like that. Kind of like how Stellar Blade's upgrade system made the game more dynamic. Monster Hunter's like tools and accessories made the game more dynamic as I explored and championed my way through that. So Monster Hunter in itself is I think when Wilds come out, it'll probably blow up in a big way, especially if it's good. But if you're curious about it and you're kind of don't know where you're going, I say check out, I think it's okay to check out Monster Hunter World. Probably okay to check out Rise. I know a lot of my friends started out in Rise. You may be like surprised at how much game there is. And like it's the same, you're doing the same thing over and over again. Like you're not picking up anything new. But what's great about Monster Hunter is like the monsters. You're constantly finding new types of monsters, which give you different types of challenges. And that in itself is like the best. I think like a game is at its best when the gameplay is at its best. When the game focuses a lot on its gameplay and gives the players good gameplay. And the monsters are definitely the star of the show when it comes to Monster Hunter. So the series as a whole is something I recommend, and I can't wait for Wilds to come up. Yeah, Monster Hunter has a lot of deep mechanics, and it's also one of those games where every item has its use. If you learn how to utilize the item and exploit the mechanics, you can super OP. Yeah, 1000%. And that's what I love about Monster Hunter is like you can min-max the game, or you can play it the way you want to play it, and you'll find a sense of fulfillment and success through all of that. Sweet. Well, this was fun, guys. I'm glad I was able to do the review with you guys. The stream's going to be up on YouTube. I'm going to put it in digital reviews, and I'll probably try to make some TikToks out of this. I got to get ready for work, but I think I'll probably be playing more Stellar Blade. I know Senua's Sacrifice is coming out this year, or this month. So I want to play the first one, the Hellblade, but I don't know if I'll have time with it. Maybe we'll just like watch a video overview and play the second one. I know it blew up. I just never picked it up. It was just something that skipped off. So we'll see what happens. I heard it's pretty short. Maybe I'll just do like an all-nighter, play that game. But I gotta get ready for work. Until next time, guys. Play nice.